The Terran Federation was losing the war. After a century of brutal conflict against the Zel'Nari Dominion, an empire of telepathic, hive-minded beings, humanity stood on the brink of annihilation. Earth itself had fallen, its surface scorched by orbital bombardments. The last human strongholds were being hunted down across the stars. Earth had been humanity's cradle and its greatest fortress, but even its defenses were no match for the relentless Zel'Nari. The final battle for Earth was a symphony of destruction. Orbital strikes, planetary sieges, and bioengineer horrors unleashed upon the last remaining cities. General Marcus Voss, the supreme commander of the Terran Federation's remaining forces, had issued a final order: evacuate as many as possible and scatter across the galaxy. But only a fraction escaped the burning ruin that was once their homeworld. Scattered remnants of the Federation became guerrilla warriors, striking from hidden bases on asteroid belts, rogue planets, and abandoned space stations. Admiral Ilara Kane, a tactical genius, led the largest resistance fleet from the shattered remains of Jupiter's moons. With their resources dwindling and morale at an all-time low, the resistance turned to unconventional warfare, hacking into Zel'Nari communication relays, assassinating key hive leaders, and using stolen Dominion technology against them. The Zel'Nari, the war was never personal. They saw humanity as an anomaly, an unpredictable, independent species that resisted assimilation. The hive mind deemed them too dangerous to coexist, fearing that their chaotic nature could unravel their meticulously structured empire. Supreme Overmind XY Loth watched the war unfold with cold calculation, viewing humanity's final days as a necessary purge. Deep in the Andromeda expanse, hidden from the Dominion's vast surveillance network, the remaining human scientists and engineers had constructed an audacious weapon, Project EOS. This prototype device was designed to sever the hive mind's neural connection, crippling their ability to coordinate. It was a desperate gamble, but humanity had no other choice. The last human fleet, a ragtag assembly of old warships and stolen Zel'Nari vessels, launched their assault on the Dominion's central command structure. The battle was brutal, but Admiral Kane and her forces managed to infiltrate the Overmind's control sphere. As the device activated, the hive mind screamed in agony, its perfect unity shattered. Without centralized control, the once unstoppable Zel'Nari forces turned against one another in chaos. For a century, humanity had fought a desperate war against the Dominion, an empire of ruthless conquerors who sought to bring every sentient species under their heel. The war had devastated entire systems, leaving once thriving colonies as barren wastelands, their cities reduced to rubble, and their people slaughtered or enslaved. The Dominion's advance had seemed unstoppable, a relentless tide washing over the stars, consuming everything in its path. But in their arrogance, the Dominion had overreached. The breaking of the Dominion came not through a single decisive battle but through a culmination of attrition, defiance, and the will of those who refused to submit. The fractured Dominion gave humanity its first real chance in generations. No longer facing a unified war machine, the surviving remnants of the Terran Federation could finally breathe, if only for a moment. Yet, survival was not victory. The war was not over. From the burned-out husks of space stations and the skeletal remains of once great starships, humanity rallied. The Federation, though shattered, was not gone. The remnants of its fleet drifted across the stars, captained by survivors who had seen too many battles, lost too many friends. The last bastions of human civilization, hidden in asteroid bases and remote outposts, now became the staging grounds for a counteroffensive. Hope flickered anew in the hearts of those who had known only despair. On the world of Epsilon Prime, where the largest battle of the century had taken place, survivors emerged from underground bunkers. They gazed upon the ruins of their cities, their once glistening spires reduced to jagged stumps of broken metal and stone. But where there was ruin, there was also determination. Engineers and scientists scavenged what they could, repurposing Dominion technology for human hands. The rebellion had begun as an act of desperation. Now, it became a mission to reclaim what was lost. The Dominion, though wounded, was not yet dead. Its ruling elite, fractured into warring factions, still held vast territories. Some warlords sought to consolidate power, carving out their own dominions from the dying empire. Others clung to their fading dreams of total conquest, refusing to acknowledge the unraveling of their once mighty reign. Their fleets still prowled the void, their soldiers still occupied countless human worlds. Every victory humanity won came at a steep price. Admiral Cassandra Voss, one of the last remaining high-ranking officers of the Federation, took command of the surviving fleet. She had been a young ensign at the war's outset, barely 20 years old when the Dominion's first strikes decimated Earth's outer colonies. Now, battle-scarred and hardened by loss, she led the fight not just for survival, but for vengeance and redemption. Her fleet, cobbled together from salvaged ships, retrofitted with stolen Dominion weaponry, became the sword of the rebellion. The battles were grueling, each victory measured in blood and sacrifice. The world of Helios 4 was liberated after a brutal campaign that lasted 8 months, its surviving citizens emerging from underground hideouts, their faces gaunt but their eyes burning with renewed resolve. On the frozen wastes of Charon's Rest, human resistance fighters ambushed Dominion supply convoys, cutting off their warlords from much-needed reinforcements. Every world reclaimed, every Dominion warlord crushed, was a step toward humanity's rebirth. But the cost was staggering. Entire generations had known nothing but war. The old ways of life were gone, replaced by a new existence forged in the fires of conflict. The scars of Dominion occupation ran deep, and for many, the thought of rebuilding seemed almost as daunting as the war itself. Yet, amid the ruins, there was hope. The dream of a restored federation, a beacon of unity in the void, refused to die. New alliances were forged in the chaos. Other species, long subjugated by the Dominion, saw humanity's defiance and joined the cause. Former enemies became allies, bound by a shared desire for freedom. The war that had once been humanity's alone became a crusade for all oppressed peoples. Together, they stood against the remnants of tyranny. The Dominion, once thought invincible, now faced its reckoning. But victory would not come easily. The war was far from over. For every Dominion fleet destroyed, another lurked in the darkness. For every liberated world, another still burned under their rule. Humanity had bought itself time, but time alone would not win the war. As the last embers of the Dominion's grip smoldered, the Federation's survivors prepared for the next phase of their struggle. The battles ahead would test their resolve like never before. But they had something the Dominion had never understood: hope. And hope, when nurtured by fire and steel, could burn brighter than any dying empire. The year is 2392. Humanity is on the brink of extinction, barely holding on after an endless war with an alien force. The TFS Indomitable, once a symbol of human military might, is now humanity's last hope. With the majority of the fleet destroyed, only this battle-worn dreadnought remains to protect the remnants of the human race. The ship is crewed by survivors, defectors, and those with nothing left to lose. Among them, a disgraced captain, Elias Voss, is the leader. His mission is simple: hold the line against overwhelming alien forces, no matter the cost. The TFS Indomitable, a relic of a forgotten era. Descriptions of the ship, its history, its fall into disrepair, and the irony that it now carries humanity's final chance. The ship's systems are outdated, and much of its crew is untested. The once proud dreadnought now carries the weight of human history and hope on its aged hull. Captain Elias Voss, from disgrace to hero. Backstory on Captain Voss. Once a decorated officer, he was disgraced for his failure during a crucial battle, which led to his demotion and exile. His return to leadership, marked by a mix of guilt, regret, and the desperate need for redemption. He's now given the ultimate responsibility to save humanity. Voss struggles with the weight of his past and his current duty, unsure if he has what it takes to lead again. The crew, survivors and legends. A diverse, troubled crew, exiles, soldiers who've lost their families, and survivors of earlier battles. Many are reluctant, some resentful, others fighting for a future they no longer believe in. Introduce key crew members, each with their own story and stakes in the battle ahead. Some have personal motivations, while others see this as their last chance for redemption. The threat: alien forces and unlikely allies. The alien enemy: a mysterious, advanced species bent on wiping out humanity. Despite their superiority, they are not immune to the same chaos that has caused humanity's downfall. The first wave of alien forces arrives. The crew faces their first test: fight or perish. A surprising revelation: a small faction of alien defectors offers assistance, citing a shared enemy in the form of their own homeworld's warlords. Conflict and leadership struggles. Tensions on the ship. As the crew faces overwhelming odds, various factions form. Some members of the crew question Voss' leadership, while others see him as their only hope. Voss struggles with his decision-making and the pressure to hold together a broken crew. The crew faces internal betrayal as some members seek their own survival at the cost of others. The final battle, holding the line. The alien forces launch their full-scale attack. The Indomitable must defend a critical human colony that holds the last of humanity's resources. Voss and the crew make their final stand, using the ship's outdated weaponry, strategies, and sheer willpower to stave off certain doom. Sacrifice and redemption. During the final battle, the crew faces unimaginable challenges, and many make the ultimate sacrifice for the survival of others. Voss, finding redemption in his final moments, reflects on the meaning of hope, sacrifice, and what it means to lead. Epilogue: The dawn of a new era. The fate of the TFS Indomitable and its crew. Whether humanity survives or falls, the story ends with a hint of something greater to come. Perhaps a new beginning, or the bittersweet end of a once proud civilization. The relic. The stars stretched in all directions, cold and indifferent to the slow decay of the human race. Among them, the TFS Indomitable drifted, a shadow of its former glory. Once the pride of the fleet, it now looked more like a tomb. Scars from countless battles marred its once pristine hull, and the faintest creaks and groans echoed through its metal bones like whispers from a forgotten era. The dreadnought was no longer the fearsome weapon it once was. Most of its primary systems were inoperable. The weaponry, old and inefficient, was little more than a deterrent. The engines, sluggish and unreliable, barely held the ship together. Yet, it was all that stood between the alien invaders and the last of humanity. Inside the command bridge, Captain Elias Voss stared out at the infinite void. His hands, once steady and sure on the controls, now shook with the weight of the task before him. He had never wanted to return to this life, the life of a commander, of responsibility. But there was no turning back now. "Captain Voss," came the voice of Lieutenant Anna Orloff, breaking his reverie. "The enemy fleet is closing in." Voss took a deep breath, pushing aside the echoes of his past. "How long until we're in range?" 10 minutes, Orloff replied, her voice cold but steady. Voss nodded. He didn't have time to be sentimental. The Indomitable was all they had left. Prepare for battle. Tell the crew to brace themselves. We hold the line here. No retreat. The lieutenant hesitated for a moment, then saluted. "Aye, sir." As she left, Voss turned to the tactical display, his fingers tapping against the console. The alien fleet was vast, far superior to anything humanity had ever faced. But what choice did they have? The war had long since passed the point of reason. There was only survival. "Captain," came a voice from behind him. Voss turned to see Commander Rael Thatcher, his second in command. The older man's grizzled face was a map of scars, both physical and emotional. Thatcher had served alongside Voss during the war's early days, but their relationship had soured during the defeat at Signib III. Voss had failed there, and now he had to make it right. "Rael," Voss said, forcing the tension out of his voice. "What's the status of the shields?" "Minimal. They're holding, but for how long, no one can say." Thatcher's eyes were grim. "We won't survive more than one pass if we don't get creative." Voss nodded. "We're all out of options, then. Prepare the crew. Let's make sure they know what they're fighting for." Thatcher eyed him closely, the unspoken question hanging in the air. "Do you really believe you can win this?" Voss met his gaze with a look of quiet defiance. "We don't have a choice. We'll fight, and if we die together." A long silence followed, but Thatcher simply gave a short nod and turned to leave. The weight of Voss' words lingered in the air as he turned back to the view of the stars. The alien fleet was closer now, and he could almost feel the tremors of the coming conflict deep within his bones. It was up to him to lead them. Failure was not an option. His hand trembled slightly as he reached for the communications console. "All hands," he said, his voice carrying across the entire ship. "This is Captain Voss. The time has come. We face the enemy together. We fight for humanity, for our future. We hold the line, no matter the cost. Our survival depends on each of you. Now, let's show them why they should fear the Indomitable." The Zel'Nari, an alien race that had nearly wiped out humanity, are unaware that a small fraction of humanity remains. They believe the war is all but over. Their strategy is to eliminate the last human-held sector, Sigma Orionis, a crucial region that holds the last remnants of human civilization, and they prepare a final campaign to crush the survivors. The Zel'Nari fleet is massive, over 1,000 organic warships, each one grown, not built. They are capable of rapid regeneration, adapt quickly to threats, and have superior weaponry and technology. The Zel'Nari believe that humanity's last stand will be futile, underestimating their foes in their desperation. The Indomitable's cunning strategy. The Indomitable, along with its small, scrappy crew, prepares for a battle unlike any before. They can't fight the Zel'Nari with sheer firepower, so they use their brains. The crew uses the debris from destroyed stations and wrecked ships to create false signals, drawing the Zel'Nari into a trap. They know the enemy's weaknesses: overconfidence, over-reliance on technology, and lack of understanding of human tactics. With a combination of electronic warfare, spoofing, hacking, and jamming the Zel'Nari systems, and a series of hit-and-run attacks, they begin to turn the tide of the battle. Guerrilla tactics, utilizing stealth and deception, keep the Zel'Nari guessing. Every piece of broken tech and every shadow in the void becomes a weapon for the last humans. Crew's involvement in the plan. The crew, made up of desperate survivors, defectors, and former legends, is crucial to this survival strategy. Captain Elias Voss takes a hands-on approach, coordinating tactics, ensuring everyone has a role to play in the grand plan. Key members, like Lieutenant Anna Orloff, have specialized knowledge in electronic warfare and lead the tech operations. Commander Rael Thatcher handles tactical combat, using his knowledge of the enemy to strike from unexpected angles. Each crew member brings their own set of skills, and their personal stakes in the survival of humanity make them resilient under pressure. The first encounter, the ambush. The first major confrontation between the Indomitable and the Zel'Nari fleet comes in the asteroid field surrounding Sigma Orionis. The Indomitable hides within the debris, using its stealth capabilities and the cover of the dead stations and ships to remain undetected. The Zel'Nari, overly confident, send their fleet into the field without caution, unaware that they are walking into a trap. At first, it's a game of cat and mouse. Hacked signals confuse the Zel'Nari, luring them into scattered, isolated positions. Then, the humans strike, small, quick, and devastating. They disable Zel'Nari ships, pick off weak targets, and force the invaders into disarray. The Guerrilla War. Over the course of several skirmishes, the Indomitable employs guerrilla tactics, striking at weak points in the Zel'Nari fleet and quickly vanishing into the void before the enemy can retaliate. Using the debris of destroyed stations as shields and fortresses, the humans create their own labyrinth of hidden strongholds and traps, a deadly maze for the Zel'Nari to navigate. Despite the odds, the Indomitable begins to inflict significant damage, and the Zel'Nari grow frustrated with their inability to crush the resistance. However, they still vastly outnumber the humans. The turning point. During a daring raid on a flagship, the crew discovers a crucial vulnerability in the Zel'Nari's organic ships. A part of their neural network can be severed, causing their ships to lose coordination, leaving them vulnerable to further attacks. Using this knowledge, the crew focuses their efforts on targeting the neural nexus of the Zel'Nari fleet, hoping to turn the tide once and for all. The crew faces personal and moral dilemmas, as some begin to question the ethics of warfare while others are driven solely by survival. The final battle. The Zel'Nari, desperate to end the human resistance, launch a massive assault on Sigma Orionis. The Indomitable, now a ghost in the stars, plays its final hand. The battle is fierce and chaotic, with the humans using their guerrilla tactics, deception, and superior knowledge of the battlefield to hold their ground. Captain Voss faces his final test of leadership as the stakes rise and the crew fights for their very survival. In a dramatic final assault, the crew uses the last of their resources to launch a devastating strike at the heart of the Zel'Nari command fleet. Aftermath. The cost of survival. Victory comes at a tremendous cost. Many lives are lost, and the Indomitable is barely functional after the battle. The remnants of humanity have not only survived, they've secured a foothold for a new beginning. But the journey has changed the crew. The survivors reflect on the sacrifices made, the nature of hope, and the cost of their victory. Chapter 2. The Ghost in the Stars. The cold emptiness of space stretched infinitely, a void so vast it made even the greatest of warships feel insignificant. The Indomitable was a relic, a ghost among the stars, yet, for those aboard, it was still a symbol of survival. Captain Elias Voss stood at the command bridge, his eyes fixed on the tactical display, which flickered with garbled signals and static from the dead wrecks scattered throughout the system. Every signal was a lie, every piece of information carefully manipulated to give them an edge. He had grown accustomed to the feeling of deceit and misdirection, but even now, his stomach churned with the weight of the upcoming battle. "Captain, the Zel'Nari fleet is coming in fast," reported Lieutenant Orloff, her fingers flying across the console. "We've got a full-scale assault, over 1,000 ships. Their forces are overwhelming." Voss didn't flinch. "They think we're easy prey," he said, his voice steady. "Prepare to execute Phase 1 of the plan. We'll use the debris fields as cover." As the crews scrambled into position, Voss allowed himself a moment of reflection. He had never imagined this would be humanity's last stand. But here they were, fighting not just for survival, but for a chance at rebirth. It was all they had left. "Rail, status report," Voss asked, turning to his second-in-command. Thatcher grunted, studying the display. "We've got their numbers, but we have the terrain. They'll expect us to fight head-on, exactly what we want. We need to keep them guessing, make every move count." Voss nodded. "I know what you're thinking. We can't afford mistakes. Let's make them regret underestimating us." The first wave of Zel'Nari ships appeared on the edge of the system, massive organic warships gliding through space like living creatures. The Indomitable remained silent, hidden in the dead husks of destroyed stations, blending into the debris. The crew had become ghosts, lurking in the shadows, waiting for their chance. "Ready when you are, Captain," Orloff said, her voice calm but taut with anticipation. Voss exhaled slowly. This was it. Let's give them a show they'll never forget. One by one, Zel'Nari ships fell. Indomitable would appear, fire a devastating salvo, and vanish into the debris field. Whispers of the ghost battleship spread through the enemy ranks. Fear, a foreign concept to the hive-minded Zel'Nari, began to take hold. The galaxy was plunged into chaos, with human colonies scattered and struggling under the overwhelming weight of Zel'Nari invasion. The Zel'Nari, an ancient and powerful race, had decimated humanity's fleet, their advanced biomechanical warriors tearing through starships with unyielding brutality. But there was hope, a spark of resistance that began to grow. The Indomitable wasn't a flagship, nor was it a ship of great fame at first. It was an aging cruiser, its hull battered and scarred from previous skirmishes, barely holding together. Yet, what it lacked in technological superiority, it more than made up for with its indomitable spirit. The ship's crew, under the command of Captain Voss, became a symbol of defiance. Each battle fought by the Indomitable fueled the flames of the human resistance. Civilians, refugees, and lost warships all heard whispers of its victories, stories of the ship that defied the Zel'Nari against all odds. It wasn't long before the legend of the Indomitable spread like wildfire, drawing those who had lost everything to its call. Voss and his crew found themselves not only fighting to survive, but also to inspire a revolution. Civilians, eager to contribute, brought whatever resources they could scavenge, old technologies, weapons, and ships, creating a network of forces that began to rise in defiance of the Zel'Nari's reign. The ossuary and the Zel'Nari's wrath. The Zel'Nari, enraged by the constant disruptions to their campaign, finally dispatched their most feared weapon, the ossuary. This biomechanical warship, a towering fortress of flesh and metal, was teeming with horrors. Monstrous beings fused with technology, designed to instill terror in any who faced it. The ossuary was more than just a warship, it was a living nightmare, a symbol of the Zel'Nari's ruthlessness. Captain Voss knew that the Indomitable would have to face the ossuary head-on. With the Zel'Nari outnumbering them and outgunning them, it was a desperate situation. The human fleet had little hope of surviving, but Voss wasn't one to give in. He had a plan, one that would require every ounce of ingenuity he had. The turning point, hack and slash. The battle that ensued was unlike any other. The Indomitable, surrounded by superior numbers and outgunned by the ossuary's weapons, was forced into a corner. The odds were overwhelming, yet Captain Voss was determined to turn the tide. Using a mix of ancient nuclear warheads and his crew's expertise in hacked Zel'Nari cybernetics, Voss launched a daring gambit. It wasn't just about firepower, it was about using the enemy's own strength against them. Voss had learned the secrets of the Zel'Nari's cybernetic network and used it to infiltrate the ossuary's command structure, exploiting vulnerabilities that only a few knew existed. In an instant, the enemy's vast warship was turned into a battlefield of confusion. The Ossuary's internal systems faltered as their biomechanical soldiers began to malfunction, turning on their masters. The crew, disoriented and in chaos, found themselves fighting their own creations, as Captain Voss had effectively turned their technology against them. The Indomitable's crew wasn't idle in this moment of opportunity. They stormed the ossuary, boarding the vessel in a daring assault. Human marines fought tooth and nail, tearing through the alien horrors aboard the ship. With each breach of the ship's hull and each fallen enemy, the crew of the Indomitable proved to the universe that humanity was far from broken. Against all odds, the Indomitable succeeded in capturing the ossuary. The once terrifying warship, a symbol of the Zel'Nari's dominance, was now in human hands. It was a victory, not just for Captain Voss and his crew, but for all of humanity. The ossuary's advanced biomechanical technology was now theirs to reverse engineer, and with it, they could turn the tide of the war. The legend of the Indomitable grew even greater in the aftermath. The ossuary's capture became a beacon of hope for all human colonies, proving that even the most insurmountable odds could be overcome with courage, innovation, and sheer determination. The repercussions: a new dawn. As the Indomitable story spread, more factions of humanity rallied to its cause. The ship's exploits inspired resistance movements throughout the galaxy, each one growing bolder and more organized. The Indomitable became not just a symbol of defiance, but the rallying point for a revolution. However, with the fall of the ossuary, the Zel'Nari were far from finished. They retaliated with brutal precision, launching counterattacks that were designed to crush the spirit of humanity's resistance. But Captain Voss and his crew were ready. They had proved that humanity could survive, and perhaps even thrive, in the face of unimaginable odds. A future forged in the stars. The capture of the ossuary marked the beginning of a new phase in the war. Humanity, though still vastly outnumbered and outgunned, was no longer alone. The legend of the Indomitable had inspired countless souls to fight for their future, for a place in the stars. Captain Voss knew the journey ahead would be long, and the cost would be high. But the legend of the Indomitable was no longer just about one ship or one crew. It was about the future of humanity, and they would fight with everything they had to ensure they had won. The Zel'Nari, a race known for their cold, calculating tactics and overwhelming technological superiority, had been thrown into turmoil by the relentless human resistance. Despite their crushing victories and superior numbers, they couldn't extinguish the fire of defiance sparked by the crew of the Indomitable. But the Zel'Nari were not a species known for mercy or retreat. They would not let humanity continue to exist as a threat. The Empire, shaken by the loss of the ossuary and the growing rebellion, had one last weapon at their disposal. The Worldbreaker, a planet-killer ship, was the Zel'Nari's ultimate weapon, a dreadnought capable of annihilating entire solar systems. Its power was unimaginable, a fusion of advanced technology and unholy bioengineering that had the potential to exterminate all life within a system with a single strike. The plan was simple: deploy the Worldbreaker, destroy every human colony, and make an example of those who dared to defy the Zel'Nari. They would leave nothing behind. The resistance would be eradicated, and with it, the hope of a future for humankind. The impossible odds. Captain Voss stood at the bridge of the Indomitable, his eyes locked on the holographic display. The Worldbreaker loomed large in the galaxy, a threat beyond comprehension. It wasn't just another enemy warship. It was a weapon of mass destruction, capable of wiping entire planets off the map with a single blast. And the Indomitable? It was just one ship. One lone battleship, battered and worn after years of combat. The crew had fought tirelessly, but this would be their final battle. Every option was weighed, every possibility considered. There was no escaping the Worldbreaker, no way to match its power. The human fleet was decimated, their numbers dwindling to almost nothing. With no reinforcements on the horizon, no allies to call upon, and no means of standing against the sheer might of the Zel'Nari war machine, Captain Voss knew this would be a suicide mission. The Indomitable would fight, but it would fight with ingenuity, not with numbers, not with firepower, but with a brilliance and resolve that had driven its crew from the beginning. The call to action. Captain Voss gathered his crew in the command center. Faces were weary, eyes heavy with the weight of countless battles. Yet, there was a fire in their hearts, a fire that refused to be extinguished. "We don't have a chance," Voss said, his voice grim. The world breaker will end us all. But we don't fight for victory. We fight to show the Zel'Nari that we will never surrender. We fight for every human who has fallen, for every colony that has been lost. We fight because we have no choice." The crew stood in silence for a moment, absorbing the weight of his words. Then, without hesitation, they began preparing. Every system on the ship would be pushed to its limits. The Indomitable would carry out a final, desperate assault, a mission that could only end in one way. Every gun would fire, every missile would be launched, and the ship's reactor would be overloaded, turned into a makeshift bomb. It was a one-way mission. But they were ready. The final assault. The battle that followed was a spectacle of desperation and fury. The Indomitable plunged into the heart of the World Breaker fleet, a lone wolf amidst a pack of predatory beasts. The Zel'Nari had no idea what to expect. After all, how could one ship hope to stand against a weapon of such destruction? But Voss's strategy was unlike any the Zel'Nari had encountered. The crew's ingenuity and knowledge of Zel'Nari technology allowed them to exploit weaknesses in the World Breaker's defenses. While the World Breaker's massive weapons began firing, tearing through space with devastating power, the Indomitable danced and dodged, using the wreckage of destroyed ships and debris to cover its approach. Every shot fired by the Indomitable was calculated, every move deliberate. Missiles streaked through the void, tearing into the World Breaker's shields and hull. The ship's advanced cybernetic modifications made it unpredictable, outmaneuvering the World Breaker in ways its enemies never thought possible. But the battle was not one of skill alone. It was a battle of spirit. The crew of the Indomitable fought with everything they had, refusing to be silenced by the overwhelming force of the enemy. They weren't just fighting to survive, they were fighting to ensure that the legend of the Indomitable would live on, that humanity's will to fight would never be broken. The sacrifice. With a final, desperate charge, the Indomitable rammed directly into the World Breaker, the force of the impact reverberating across the sector. It was a last-ditch attempt to bring down the destroyer, to deliver a death blow that would not be forgotten. The Indomitable's reactor overloaded, and with a deafening roar, it exploded. The blast was visible across the galaxy, a brilliant flare of light that outshone the stars themselves. The World Breaker's shields were shattered, and its core systems were disrupted. But it wasn't enough. The World Breaker remained functional, though deeply wounded. The Indomitable was gone, but the damage had been done. The sacrifice of the Indomitable had cost the human resistance their greatest ship, their last hope. But it had not been in vain. In the explosion's wake, a new spark had been ignited, a spark that refused to die. Epilogue, a flame that never dies. The Indomitable's sacrifice became a rallying cry. Across the galaxy, scattered remnants of humanity, those who had been hiding or had fled, began to rise again. They had seen the explosion, heard the stories of the ship that had taken on the World Breaker itself. The legend of the Indomitable spread like wildfire, a beacon of hope in the darkest of times. The war was far from over. The World Breaker still loomed as a threat, and the Zel'Nari were not easily defeated. But humanity, emboldened by the bravery of the Indomitable's crew, refused to lie down and die. The tide had turned, and the Zel'Nari were beginning to realize that their victory was not as certain as they once thought. The human resistance began to regroup, to reorganize, and to strike back. The Indomitable had shown them that the spirit of humanity could not be crushed, and that even in the face of annihilation, humanity would find a way to survive. The war would continue, but humanity would rise again.